All right, good evening. My name is Catherine, and I'm from SEB Housing. And tonight I'm going to run the lottery for the affordable apartments at Middleborough Station. And so I'll get the lottery underway in just a few minutes. If you have any questions during this session, you are encouraged to either type them into the Zoom chat function, or when you came into the meeting, you were muted just to minimize any outside noise, but you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question. First, I'm just going to give you some background information on who applied to the lottery, and all of this information is going to be sent to you in a email later on tonight, or actually tomorrow morning, with the waiting list attached to it. So all this info you'll have in writing, but I will just get started with those FYIs. So all households who were approved for this lottery should already have a lottery application number. And that number begins with the letter A. So it's A dot, a series of numbers. And in this case, it's between A.001 and A.087. So if you don't have that number, it did come in an email to anyone who was approved. If you don't have it, let me know by sending me a message in the chat, because that is the number that is going to be on these waiting lists and that is going to be drawn tonight rather than your name. So there's 34 total affordable units. There was 85 total completed applications. So there's going to be 85 households in the lottery. The numbers go up to 87 because there was a couple of duplicate applications that needed to be removed. So there are 17 one-bedroom apartments. There's 23 applicants for those 17 units. One of the one-bedroom apartments has disabled accessible features. So the two applicants reporting that they need the features of that unit are going to have priority on the waiting list for the accessible one-bedroom. There's also 14 affordable two-bedroom apartments, and there was 33 applicants for those 14 two-bedrooms. 30 of those applicants are either type 3 or type 2 households, so that means they have the same priority on the waiting list, rather than the smaller type 1 households who have second priority. There were 3 type 1 households that applied for a two-bedroom unit. There's also a two-bedroom disabled accessible unit, so the 3 applicants who reported needing the features of that unit are going to have priority for the disabled accessible two-bedroom. There's also 3 three-bedroom apartments. There was 44 applicants for those apartments, 39 of them, so the majority of them are type 3 households, which will have priority on the list, and there are 5 type 2 households as well. And again, there's one of those 3-bedroom units is a disabled accessible unit, so the 4 households who require the features of the unit will have priority for that particular 3-bedroom. There's also local preference or priority for several of the affordable units. So if you answered yes to the local preference question on the lottery application, your lottery eligibility email should have confirmed that for you. And when the drawing takes place tonight, there will be some households, there will be a local preference drawing, which will assign an order of priority for those who have local preference. So when the drawing takes place tonight, you're not going to know exactly where you fall on any of the waiting lists, even if you're drawn first, and that's because I first need to sort the results from tonight in order to compile the waiting list. So, for example, if you're the first number drawn, but you didn't apply for a 3-bedroom, that doesn't mean you're going to be first on, a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom list, of course, and everyone's numbers just being drawn in the same drawing. We're not doing a separate drawing for each waiting list, for example. So you won't know a whole lot tonight, but it is part of the process to be able to see the lottery drawing take place. And then tomorrow morning, you'll be sent the waiting list themselves that have been sorted, and you will know a lot more about where you stand. So I mentioned there's going to be 2 drawings tonight. One will be a local preference drawing. The other will include all 85 applicants and will be the general drawing. And I'm going to be using a website called random.org to complete the drawing. So It'll be instantaneous. You'll be able to see it on your screen. It won't be, drawing numbers manually. And first, I'll do the local preference drawing. That's going to include households who either live or work full-time in Middleborough or have children going to Middleborough Public Schools. So I'll insert 28 application numbers for that lottery because there's 28 local preference households. And there'll be a digitally generated order. And after that, I'll do the general drawing, which will have all 85 lottery applications included. So like I said, the lottery will be instantaneous. You'll be able to see it on your screen. I'm going to do just a quick demonstration for you so you're able to see what that's going to look like in a couple minutes, just in case you're not familiar with this very basic looking website. I'm going to share my screen so you'll be able to see this in just a moment here. All right, so this is random.org. I'm going to scroll down to list randomizer. And just for demonstration purposes, this isn't the lottery. I'm typing in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When I click randomize, it's going to reorder those numbers, and that's going to be how the drawing takes place. So when I'm actually doing the lottery drawing in a few minutes, the numbers are going to be in the format that you're familiar with. So A dot for all of the application numbers. But just for demonstration purposes, 1 through 5, I click randomize, and it spits it out with a random order. So in this case, number 3 was first, number 5 was last, for example, there. Excuse me. So that's what it's going to look like in just a few minutes. I'll screen share again once I'm ready to run the lottery. And so after the lottery, like I said, you'll get an email from us tomorrow from info@scbhousing.com. That email is going to have more information on next steps. It's also going to have the waiting lists and a synopsis of like who applied and everything that I gave you at the beginning of this call. And you'll be able to look at the waiting list and see where your lottery application number was drawn in relation to other application numbers. And keep in mind, too, that if you applied for more than one unit size, you're going to be on more than one list. If you have local preference, you're going to be on 2 lists. The local preference list, so for example, there's a 1-bedroom local preference list, but there's also a 1-bedroom general list. No matter whether or not you have local preference, you're going to be on both of those lists if you applied for a 1-bedroom. On the local preference list, local preference households will have higher priority, but you still have a position on that list if you don't have local preference. So just make sure you are checking out all of the lists and finding your number on those. So you're going to notice that the top households on each waiting list are going to be highlighted in green. Their lottery application numbers will be in green. And that's because those are the households who are going to be immediately invited to move forward to the next step in the process, which is to complete that lease application with the leasing office. So the leasing office, their actual lease screening is going to be, the screening that includes rental history checks, reference checks, criminal background checks, that sort of thing that you might be familiar with from renting elsewhere. And then if you are approved to lease with them, you'll be able to reserve one of the affordable apartments, and then you'll be referred back to SCB Housing for your program eligibility. Because remember, to get into this lottery, you didn't submit any supporting documentation yet. You just self-reported your income. And your final program eligibility review with SCB Housing will be when you need to submit your, pay stubs, tax returns, that sort of thing, so we can confirm your eligibility for the affordable housing program. So still a couple steps in the process after tonight's lottery, but that's what you can expect. If you're one of the top households on the waiting list, you'll be highlighted in green. The leasing office will reach out to you to complete that lease screening, and then you'll be referred back to SCB Housing once you've been certified by the leasing office as lease eligible. If you're not one of the households that's highlighted in green after tonight, It doesn't mean that you won't be able to move forward in the process. It just means that everyone ahead of you will need to have either leased a unit or dropped off the waiting list, which does happen. You know, there's not everyone who's on all of these waiting lists is going to lease one of the units. Maybe they're no longer interested. Maybe they've already found a different place. Maybe they won't be eligible. So there are several reasons that someone ahead of you could drop off the waiting list. So the Middleborough station, the apartments are available now. So we've been told that units should be available fairly soon after all of these screenings are complete. So there shouldn't be too much of a wait for move-ins. And then finally, just a reminder to households that anyone who's renting an affordable apartment, you'll eventually have to do a recertification if you plan to live there for more than a year. So if you, for example, were to sign a lease for March 1st, sometime around late 2026, should be doing your recertification with the leasing office. And that might include, submitting pay stubs, tax returns, and that sort of thing again. So we just like to remind everyone to have your records close, maybe going online and finding your pay stubs and all of that. So does anyone have any questions before I run the actual drawings? I'm ready to do that. All right.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are all the apartments available to rent like soon, or because I'm currently in an apartment that I'm not, my lease isn't up until the end of August.
Yeah, so my understanding is that they are available now. If you were to be asked to do your lease screening and all of that, our certifications, meaning when SEB Housing approves you, are good for 6 months. That doesn't mean that the leasing office needs to wait 6 months to sign the lease. So they will try to work with you and figure out a lease date that might, work for their purposes as well. But, it could work out.
Because it doesn't look like everything's done over there. It looks like there's maybe like another building that isn't complete.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
We're not on site, so I don't have eyes on the building or anything, but
I mean,
let me follow up
every day. So
yeah. Let me follow up on that for you then. If I know that they're pre-leasing, but why don't you shoot me an email at info@scbhousing.com just so after I follow up with the leasing office over there or the development team over there, I can get back to you on the timeline.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anyone else? Okay. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again because I'm going to go back over to random.org. Bring this up. All right, I'm going to start that screen share again. All right, so I'm back in random.org. Before I run the screen or run the drawing, I need to show you, this is a spreadsheet that has all the lottery application numbers here. So the local drawing, this has the 28 numbers that represent the 28 households who have local preference. So I'm going to copy and paste these numbers into the random.org website first. List randomizer. So these are the 28 lottery application numbers of the local preference households at Middleborough Station. So I'm going to click randomize, and this is a local preference drawing from Middleborough Station. All right. After the drawings, I'm going to scroll through so you can see the results here, but I'm just going to make it a little easier to read. So just bear with me 1 minute here. All right. So this is the local preference drawing here. This is the results for that. So when we're sorting the results onto a local preference waiting list, if you have local preference, this is the order that we're going to be using. And just to give you what I mean by sorting, so this is from the information packet, and it's kind of showing you the different priorities on each waiting list. So if you applied for a 2-bedroom and you have local preference and you're a type 2 or 3 household, you have first priority on that waiting list, and then it goes from there. So just to give you some, I know it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for someone who's not actually sorting the results, but this is where you can find how the waiting lists are sorted. So if you're wondering after tonight, my number actually came up really early in the results. How come I'm not number 2 on the waiting list? This might be helpful to reference. All right. So the general drawing, this is the all 85 applicants who applied for the lottery. So I'm going to go back to random.org, but I'm going to X out of that completely. So we start a whole new drawing here. I just inserted the 85 application numbers here. So this is a general drawing. This includes everyone who applied and was approved for the Middleborough Station lottery. So this is the general drawing for Middleborough Station. Obviously, you can't read that right now because it's pretty small, I'm sure, on your screen. I'm going to put it into the spreadsheet here. Hopefully, it's a little easier to read. And I'm just going to change the format so you're able to see it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back to the local drawing so everyone can see if you were a local preference household. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. These are the results from that drawing. And the general drawing is here. I'm going to scroll down so you can see all 85 places. So you're looking for your lottery application number here. Again, this doesn't tell you a whole lot yet because I haven't sorted the results onto the waiting list. Every type 3, 2, 1 household is all jumbled in here. You don't know who applied for which unit size. But if you would like me to look up your lottery application number, you can go ahead and put it into the chat function in Zoom, or you can unmute yourself and ask for it, and I can let you know where you fell. And then tomorrow morning, you'll learn a lot more about your standing because you'll have the waiting lists that are sorted. Almost at the bottom here. All right. So if you didn't see your lottery application number, or if you want me to look it up for you, please let me know what that is, and I can look it up.
Hi, I can't get into Zoom, so I'm just on the phone. Could you look up mine, please?
Of course. Yep. What is it?
It's A.049.
A.049. Hold on a second here. On the local drawing, you were drawn 27th. In the general drawing, you were drawn 79th.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
No problem. And then there's a question here. Hold on 1 second here. Okay, so there's a question here. Where would I be on the list if I live in Middleborough? A.064. So on the waiting list, we don't know your placement yet, but in the local drawing, you were drawn 28th, and in the general drawing, you were drawn 77th. So once I do the sort the results of these drawings tonight, you'll know where you fall on the waiting list. And then another one here was 074. You were drawn 41st in the general drawing. You weren't on that local list or local drawing. I think that was it. Anyone else? So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to sort the results onto the waiting list, and then you will receive that email from info@scbhousing.com. It'll have the sorted waiting list, so you'll be able to see if you're one of the top households on the waiting list that's highlighted in green. And if you're not, that doesn't mean that you won't ever be invited forward, because people ahead of you on the waiting list could drop off. So we'll be in touch. If you are not one of the households to lease one of these units initially, you'll remain on the waiting list. And each year, the leasing office at Middleborough Station will reach out to you and ask if you want to remain on the waiting list in case someone who's living in one of the affordable apartments moves out and they need to release the unit to someone who's qualified for the affordable housing program. So just keep that in mind as well. Any questions? All right, you'll be hearing from us tomorrow morning, and this will hopefully all make a lot more sense then. So I appreciate your joining in, and have a good evening.